Hey, welcome to Our Modern Heritage, the Home and Family Culture podcast. I'm your host, Jody Chafee, and I'm super excited today to have on the show Lindsay Bryan-Podvin. She is a biracial financial therapist, speaker, and author. She's passionate about helping high-earning couples recommit to their relationships using shame-free money coaching. It's her mission to teach all her couples how to stand in their power by including money in their relationships. So awesome. Welcome, Lindsay.
Thanks so much for having me, Jody. I'm happy to be here.
I'm excited about this because, I've been studying about family culture and learning about like the narratives and beliefs that we bring with us into our families before, from our childhood and our upbringing and things. And, money is a big issue in that narrative. And so, the beliefs that your parents had about money, you adopt those subconsciously. You don't even think about it. It's just becomes part of, because that's how culture is. Culture is our norm. It's our traditions. It's the customs that we're used to. And so we often don't even realize or recognize that we're adopting those beliefs and until we have our own family.
Exactly.
So how did you get into this? How did you find, why are you so passionate about, biracial couples and marriage around finances? What brought you into this field?
Yeah. To me, it makes a lot of sense, but I can totally see how people are like, why this particular niche? So I serve any high earning couple, regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation. I make it really clear how I identify as a biracial woman. I am Filipino and white, and I was raised in a white family. So I often had people identify me, right? So they would say that, oh, you look Italian or Mexican, or, oh, you're just like your sisters and my sisters are all white. So I always had people labeling and assigning an identity to me. So now as an adult, I make it really clear how I identify so that I don't have people playing a game that I grew up with, which is like, guess your race or guess your heritage, right? So that's why I make it really crystal clear from the outset. And then in terms of high earning couples, it's just the way things kind of shook out. I'm a trained social worker, mental health, and I had specialized in anxiety and depression for many, many years. And as you can imagine, a lot of people are anxious and have some big feelings about money because of the way we do or don't talk about it in our homes, in our larger cultures, in our communities, in our religions, et cetera, et cetera. And I felt like as a mental health clinician, I was really uniquely positioned to talk to people about money in a way that was safe. A lot of money talk, in my opinion, from what I see, is very shame-based. Like you're stupid if you don't have an emergency fund, or you're dumb if you have consumer debt. And that doesn't really resonate with me. So I felt
it's not helpful, right?
No, oh my gosh, it's so not helpful. And if you have any anxiety or worries, like forget about it. If that's what you see and hear, you're not going to want to take charge of your personal finances. It's going to be a huge turnoff. So I had an interest in personal finances in my own life and wanted to bring it to my clients. So I got certified in financial social work. And I said I'd kind of see whoever came in, and who ended up coming in were these individuals who were married or partnered. And I really quickly found out that I needed both people in the room. So I just kind of kept listening to the needs of my clients and the different things that were kind of shaping it. So I kind of let my practice shape itself organically by saying, here's what I do. Who does this resonate with? And the more I kind of narrowed in on my clientele, the stronger my brand messaging became.
Yeah. Because that's, there's, what is it? Riches in the niches or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, sure. Well, what I love about a lot of what you said, like this idea of so much shame being attached to the discussion around money.
Yeah.
And that shame isn't, oh man, I did something really stupid. It's like, I am stupid and I need to keep this buried and hidden. Yes. And so that if you bring that into a relationship, then wow, that's scary, right? To like, what are the kinds of, in these discussions, how have you seen that manifest in these discussions when people feel the shame? Describe that barrier, what that looks like in like a conversation or when you're talking to your clients. What is that?
Yeah,
How does that look?
it's just so much negative self-talk and guilt about a belief or a behavior. And then it can kind of shape the relationship. If let's say I came into a partnership with a lot of student loan debt and I had a lot of guilt around it and shame that somehow having student loan debt made me a bad person, or somehow I wasn't worthy of an education that wasn't financed via student loans, then what kind of energy am I bringing into my relationship if I feel guilty? Maybe I feel like because I have student loan debt, I have to do more kind of physical labor around the house. Or maybe I feel like I have to kind of tamper down my moods. I can only be happy or neutral because like I can't be sad or angry because I already have this student loan debt and that's its own version of baggage. So I can't bring anything else into the relationship. And that's just like one example, right? It could shape itself many, many different ways, but that is an example. And I also see it on the other side of things, right? So I work with high earning couples, and I define that as $150,000 a year or more, knowing that depending on the cost of living, depending on whether you have kids or not, depending on your lifestyle, that may be high or low even, right?
Yeah.
But that's just the number that I use because it's the easiest. I don't have like a nice little calculator that like where you drop a pin, it like recalibrates what high earning means. But the reason I chose that is that 122 is considered 122K is considered like upper middle income. And so I chose 150 because it was a nice round number. So yeah, but I see a lot of shame with those couples too, right? How dare I have this money, particularly if I came from a working class family? Like why was I the person who was able to like get out of that cycle? Will I still fit in with my old family and friends? Are they going to think I'm a a-hole? Like, there's a lot of other shame that can come up with earning some more money.
That's so fascinating because a lot of it, from my perspective, stems from the narrative and the stories that we learn from our parents. And so it's like, I mean, why would anybody feel like, oh, I don't deserve this education because I needed to use student loans, unless growing up, there was discussion around that student loans with a negative connotation, and judgment around, this is a bad thing, or I don't deserve to make all this money because my parents had to work for so hard. So that comes from a narrative that you have to work hard in order to earn a living, or to earn that much, or to, that I don't deserve this because I don't know, those kinds of stories are created and generated from the discussions we grow up around without even realizing it.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And they're also shaped from the lack of discussions we have, right?
Yeah.
There's so much power in the words that are left unsaid. So if we don't talk about money, if we don't talk about income, that also shapes us as going, wow, money is dirty or shameful or it's taboo. So it's so fascinating to me that the way we do or don't talk about money is going to leave an impression on our family heritage, on our culture, regardless.
Yeah. Yeah. Because a lot of things are just kind of inferred, especially like if we look at our media, there's a lot of the bad guy is always the big business owner or things like that in a lot of cartoons and stuff. Or, if you don't, like you said, if you don't talk about this, and you have to like intentionally create the narrative that you want for your family, then things can be inferred that you didn't intend or anticipate creeping into our beliefs and things like that. So that's awesome. So what is it, where do you begin with this consultation? Like what's the first step in this process?
Yeah, you're going to love it because what we do is we go back to childhood. And what I find exactly. What tends to happen is people come in and they're like, I have this financial problem. I am obsessed with checking my bank account, or I'm terrified of looking at my numbers, or we spend too much, or we are afraid to spend, right? So they have all of these like what they think are really tangible things that have to do with their money, which they are tangible things. And I do go into like, you know, personal finance 101 with my clients. But
Right.
oftentimes I say we have to go back. We have to go back to what your childhood was like, what the messaging was around money, what you learned from your parents and grandparents, schools, neighborhood, church, etc. And I
Mhm.
often get a lot of resistance there of like, why do I have to talk about what happened when I was in elementary school if I'm, 45 now? What does that have to do with my behavior now? And as you know, our brains are just soaking up everything from
Mhm.
0 to 7. So we really have to go back to those particular years to get a sense of what was going on. Were you living in a household where money was tight and you could feel it in the way that it was communicated about, of like, oh, we can't afford to do XYZ this month, or,
Mhm.
oh, we can't order pizza tonight because we're waiting on, dad got laid off or something like that? Or
Yeah.
were you on the other side of the coin, not understanding that sometimes money had to be earned, right? It can go in so many ways, but I often start by going back.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's so many things that we don't even, well, because our subconscious is always going. Even if we don't hear things directly or told things directly, that subconscious is constantly digesting, like, oh, what is that? Oh, what? Kind of like interpreting until later on when you're an adult and you're going, I didn't know that I thought that. It was just something that
Right.
was so subconscious and wasn't deliberate. Okay, so going back,
Mm-hmm.
unbury these narratives, dig it out. Like that must be
Mm-hmm.
kind of painful for some people, right? To get that, go those things out in the
Yeah.
open. That, do you get that barrier, the shame barrier hitting right at that point too, as well as like just talking? I mean, there's talking about the
Yeah,
surface, but then to go
sometimes,
deep.
but yeah. Yeah, what I often find is like sometimes shame going back, but more than anything, finally like an understanding of like,
Oh, cool.
oh, that makes sense why I behave in this way, or that makes sense why I think these things, and a deeper understanding for current behaviors based on past lessons. So it almost helps to take some of that shame away because we
Mm,
start to kind of connect the dots, so to speak. And that really helps people to go, oh, I'm not just, stupid or less than or unworthy because I have student loan debt, let's say. I can start to understand why I might have assigned those feelings to this particular financial thing that's going on in my life.
very cool. Okay, that makes sense because you start to see, oh, this was just a belief that I had. It's not necessarily that um,
Right.
that things are that I'm dumb. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, cool. So once you uncover those blocks, then okay, so what's next? What comes up next in the process? How do you resolve the next step? Now that they know, oh, this was from my family
Yeah.
history.
Yeah, so then we start kind of going, okay, now I can acknowledge that and now I can kind of release it. I don't have to hold on to it anymore, right? So thank you, old money story, for shaping me in this way. And now I don't have to hold on to that anymore. Now I can create my own money story, my own narrative, either on my own or with my partner, in a way that serves me better. How much is it helping me to say I'm stupid and I'm an idiot for having student loan debt? Well, it actually isn't. It's not helping me to pay off my loans quicker. It's not helping me to feel comfortable, confident in my relationship. It's actually not helping. So I can kind of put that to bed and say, I can understand why I internalize that, because my parents would say things like, oh, so and so totally lives above their means. They're living such a fake lifestyle. They're living on borrowed money, or whatever was the language in the household. And we
Yeah.
can start to put that to bed and say, okay, what's a better story for me that I can start using that is going to serve me and my relationship in a way that feels better? Well, then maybe it's starting to really look at that action with compassion and with logic by saying, actually, taking out those student loans afforded me the ability to go to a big school that I wanted to go to. And it afforded me the ability to connect with a lot of friends. And it afforded me the ability to meet people of different cultures, right? So thinking about the value add that came from that particular financial action, and then carrying that forward of like, yes, I have student loan debt, and I have a lot of the things in my life today because of what that expense afforded me.
Wow. I love that perspective of being grateful and having gratitude for the experience and looking for the ways that it did serve you, rather than it's like like you said, changing the story. Like, instead of attaching that shame and regret, attach the gratitude and recognizing, acknowledging the blessing that it did afford you. That's a really cool way of looking at it, that you know changing the narrative, creating a new feeling, creating a new culture around your beliefs about money. Okay, so then each of you get a new direction. I love that. And then what's next? You're gonna say something after that. So I know my internet's really choppy. Just for those of you watching, my internet's kind of choppy, and so when this goes, there's just stuff that I can't edit out. So it's we can still hear each other, and so it's like okay, there might be a slight delay, but I'm really enjoying this conversation with you, Lindsay, and so I'm excited to share it. And this is so personal and powerful to me, that the different things that my husband and I grew up with. And, I often talk a lot about this narrative that we grew up in, that, there's a certain path that you should follow in order to get quote unquote successful. And that now that my husband and I are actually in a place where we're looking back and addressing those beliefs, and we question that. We question the status quo. We're going, wait a second, that didn't really serve us in the long run. We don't have, there's not just one path to success. There's actually many ways. And now we're on a new path where we're creating and defining what success looks like for us. And it's different because there's no outline. There's not really like we're trying to go in the entrepreneurial route and feel like we're doing something that's unique and different for us anyways, especially different from our personal heritage from each of our families. And so this topic is really important to me, thinking about, okay, we've got to go a different route. We've got to change our beliefs, and we are deeply analyzing the things that we grew up in, where it's like when we brought up any idea or a suggestion of a business idea that we had, our family's immediate response was, danger, what are you doing? Don't think about, you can't do that. That's a lot of work. That's a big investment, or that's taking a lot of time. And so we observed the narrative that our family has around our goals and the change in our direction. And so it's almost kind of a lonely path that we're on, because we can't call and be, hey, we had this success in our business, because we don't really know that they would even celebrate that with us. And so it's cool to hear this conversation, to know that, people like you creating a service for couples who are going, what, something's not right, and we're not happy with our financial situation, and it's impacting our relationship. And so we need help. We need direction. And that's great that you're providing this service. And I love that it starts with analyzing your history and figuring out, okay, where did these stories come from? What is this shame really based in? And can we change the narrative? Let's change it. It's cool.
Yeah. And I love you sharing about you and your husband's, what you had kind of soaked up in terms of some of those underlying money stories. That's a narrative I hear all the time. I happen to work with a lot of entrepreneurs or people who are an entrepreneur and their partner is traditionally employed, right? And that can create all sorts of its own unique dynamics. But I think that, to your point about what like your parents or grandparents or family members said, for so long, working for somebody else was safe. get a job at a hospital, get a job in a marketing firm, get a job in supply chain, automotive, whatever. Like, get a job that has lots and lots of employees, a Fortune 500 company. That's the safe ticket, right? And to me, because I'm also self-employed, I'm an entrepreneur, I also had subscribed to that for a long time. And then, like many people, I went and did the big, it wasn't corporate, but I did the big healthcare system, right? The big safe healthcare system. And it was that same thing of, actually, I want to do it my own way. And I have ideas of how I want it to work. And now with everything that's happening, we're recording this in April of 2020. To me, if anything, what it has shown me is to double down on my entrepreneurial spirit, because there is no such thing as a safe job. There is no such thing as a guaranteed job. So I'd rather double down and bet on myself than put my energy and effort towards somebody else's mission. So I love that you shared that. I think that's so cool. And I think it's really great to have like an entrepreneurial, couple.
Yeah, it's been a new journey for us. Like we call this our family culture journey that we've gone through, and we examining our history and now trying to go forward with our new path. And it's tough. It's not easy to make that shift. And I mean, I count myself very blessed that my husband, we're both on board with this path. We're both in it together. And I know, like you mentioned, that it can be difficult if only one of you wants to pursue, wants to stay traditional and one of them wants to be entrepreneurial. That can be difficult. I experienced that a lot with, families who want to homeschool versus people, if the couple wants to homeschool, one wants to stay traditional. But, because there's a narrative, there's belief around what's quote unquote right and what's correct. And, but I love that we live in a time where you can do anything, and that I think we should do more to question, especially right now. Like you said, we're recording this in April 2020. We've got the COVID-19 issue going on where so many people are out of work. So many people are watching their savings dwindle, and it's scary. But we can create that opportunity for families to think outside the box. Do you provide that kind of coaching around like, okay, let's see what we can create differently? Or is that, I don't know.
I mean, so it's outside of my scope for sure. Like, that's not the bulk of what I do, but I think like anything, when you're in something, you feel called to share with others how you were able to do it. So if I have an entrepreneurial couple sitting in front of me struggling with an issue that I've gone through, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you just need this one thing, or oh my gosh, have you heard about so-and-so's podcast, right? Like, I'm going to share it. And that's also the beauty of coaching, right? So even though I'm a traditionally trained therapist, stepping away from therapy and into coaching means I have even more flexibility. So again, this idea, this new theme, Jody, that I'm hearing us talk about today is this idea of like traditional safety and security, right? Go the education route, become a therapist, work at a healthcare system or in a private practice, and, then you'll be safe. And also just like coaching gives me so much more flexibility than therapy did.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. This is so cool. Okay. So then we're learning about ourselves. We're learning about our financial situation. What advice do you have for somebody who's listening to this podcast on their own, and they're going, oh, this is an issue for us. What do we do to address this with our partners?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, whoever is listening to this and is going, wow, I really haven't talked to my spouse or partner about money in a meaningful way, you're not alone. I would say the bulk of people tend to not talk about it until they have to. And then it creates this negative self-fulfilling prophecy of like, talking about money is going to be awkward and tense, so we don't talk about it. And then we only talk about it when we have to, like if somebody loses their job, or like if we have to repair the roof on our house, right? So what I always encourage couples to do is have regular money dates, which sound so boring, but I think they're fantastic. And it's really as simple as sitting down I invite my couples to start out by doing money dates once a week and then backing off to once a month. And you can have a variety of things on the agenda, but anything from like how much are we earning and how much are we spending each month, to where do we want to be financially in 5 years, to some of those deeper questions about like, what did you learn about money kid? What was your first job and how were you paid? All of those things help to strengthen and deepen our relationships. What we know, depending on what study you look on, money is the number one or number two cause of divorce.
Right.
And to me, it's so preventable if we just had the capability to talk to our partners about it and know that we could do it in a safe way. You know, to me, it's like you talk to a therapist about, you know, your childhood trauma, about your sex life, about things like that. This is just as imperative of a pillar in your relationship that needs to be addressed. And it needs to be addressed in a way where neither person feels stupid or shameful.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that idea. Going on money dates, financial dates. Sorry, I blended the word. Money dates to talk about your finances and to approach it with safety. Because when you model that, you know, talking about, you know, it's great to bring that in as a couple. And then when you model that, your children, if there are children in the mix of what you're setting up and establishing as a family, they observe that, they see that. They understand like, oh, this is a safe topic. There's not meaning that we can assign to money. It's just something that we talk about as a family. It's like the same thing, like you mentioned, when you have like therapy for your sexual health or for, you know, your relationship and things like that. With, you know, I've had interviews about this where it's like, if you make sexual health less taboo and a safe topic to talk about, then it becomes something that you can talk about with your family. It's just like you normalize it, right? It's very important to normalize that discussion so that you don't have shame attached to it. And it's the same thing, like you said, with money, with our finances. When we normalize this discussion, then we can break up those false narratives that this is a shame-based discussion and that this is a safe thing we can talk about. I love that.
Yep. Yeah. Because if your kids see you only engaging in money discussions when you're arguing about it, they're going to internalize that, right? They're going to go, wow, money is a really tense topic. I don't want to talk to my future partner about money. That my parents always fought about it, right? So we want to make sure that we include them and we engage them in ways that are, to your point, safe and normal, and we don't stigmatize it. To me, you know, we engage with money every day, whether we are earning it, spending it, saving it, loaning it, it doesn't matter. We're engaging with it. And so, you know, can you imagine if we treated, you know, food in the way that a lot of us treat money, which is like such a taboo? Can you imagine if we fed our kids but didn't share with them like the reason why we have fruits and vegetables on their plate, or the reason why you can only have, you know, certain treats on your birthday? Like, you know, we talk about it and we include that in the narrative because you're engaging with food daily, and we want our kids to have a healthy and normal relationship with food. We don't want them to be scared of food. We don't want them to be avoidant of food. We don't want them to be shamed about food. It's the same thing with money. If we can include it and involve it, then there isn't that fear around it.
Wow. That's so cool. I love that how much this relates to so many topics, and how, I mean, I've had these discussions about the nutrition and studies around normalizing that discussion too. And it's like, I get that. Oh, I get that. You know, that was actually what I studied, was nutrition. And so I love that be able to, you know, have that, be intentional. When you were talking, that what came to my mind is the theme of what family culture, how to create a culture that you design, that you intend, is to be intentional. You know, if the only time, like you said, if the only time you talk about money is when you're arguing about it, subconsciously or inadvertently, you're creating the narrative that money is bad. So that's awesome. Right. So that's so cool. And so like said, what are some of the ways that we can cope with the anxiety? Like, what are some of the ways that we, you know, because there's so much anxiety wrapped around it. If we are going through, trying to pay off debt, trying to pay off our student loans, trying to save money, those kinds of things can create a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress. So what are some ways that we can cope with the stress and anxiety that does, come with finances?
Yeah. So I think I realized as you're asking this question that I didn't answer like part 3 of what do I do with my couples. So first we look at the old narrative, then we replace the new narrative. And then this is really step 3, which is engaging with your money, right? So really getting comfortable with the numbers of knowing what's coming in and what's going out. Anxiety comes from the unknown. And when we don't engage with our money, it's a huge unknown, it's a huge uncertainty, and of course, it's going to create a ton of anxiety. So as daunting a task it may sound like, the more we engage with our money, like the first couple of times, if we haven't engaged with it in a meaningful way, and by that I mean you don't know how much you're earning or how much you're spending or how much you owe on various debts, you don't know your net worth, you don't know if you're saving or investing in retirement, right? So first we have to figure out like a lot of the basics about your money, and those first couple of times it'll feel daunting, just like any new task, and then over time it'll get easier. So one thing to really cope with financial anxiety is really understanding the basics of money. And my belief is that like money is pretty simple. Humans make it complicated, right? So there's like 3 things that I tell all my clients, and then they can kind of tweak it in a way that works for them. So the 3 like basics of personal finance are: spend less than you earn, make sure you're saving some money for an emergency. Like right now, again, we're really seeing the importance of having some money set aside for things like this. And then 3, make sure you are thinking about your future financially. And that may be paying down debt, that may be investing in your retirement. For most people, it's a combination of both. But once you have those building blocks down, you as a couple, as a unit, you get to decide how you want to make money work for you. And that's kind of what I stand on, is that it's really not as hard as a lot of people try to make it be. And yes, there's jargon and there are, definitions of things, but for the most part, it's not as complicated as it seems.
So list those 3 one more time for us, so we have clarity.
Yeah, absolutely. So absolutely. So spending less than you earn each month. So making sure you're not overspending on a monthly basis. 2 is making sure that you are saving some money in case of an emergency. And you can rename that a rainy day fund. You can rename that whatever you want, but having a cushion of cash available to you is really important. I recommend starting out with $1,000 and then working your way up to 3 to 6 months of expenses, which again goes back to like what are you earning and what are you spending each month? We want to know what you're spending. That's your expenses for the month. And then number 3 is think about your future financially. And that often means paying down debt or investing in your future retirement.
Very cool. I love that you said that it really takes this engaging regularly with your money so you can see what's income and outgoing, and then doing those three are so important to just spend less than you earn. Like that sounds really simple, but because credit has become so normalized in our culture, it's like so normal or common to just spend above our means because, well, we could just put it on the credit card. So, throw away the credit card, set it aside and try not to spend on the credit card, right? Have that savings in place for a rainy day and just prepare for the future. That makes so much sense. And if you're engaging in your finances regularly, that is, like going back to the food analogy, we have to eat every day. And so we engage and we interact with food all the time. So, be intentional about interacting with your finances every day. That would definitely, because like you said, anxiety comes from being unaware or the unknown, right? And if you're engaging in your finances consistently and regularly, that would help to erase that fear of the unknown, because you're going, I know exactly what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's empowering. That's really cool. That's really cool.
It is. It is.
Cool. Awesome. Lindsay, I really enjoyed this so much. And like I said, this is something that I really appreciate personally, because it's just knowing that there is a possibility, there is potential as couples that we can come together in a safe environment to have these regular discussions, as long as we acknowledge that this can be touchy, but let's just come with a non-judgmental attitude. And I love the idea of looking back at your family history to see where these stories come from, because it's like, you come to a realization that I don't have to hold on to that baggage, just let it go. And so that's really awesome. And then your 3 tips of just living within your means, saving, and looking to the future, and engaging with your money regularly. I just love all of that. Thank you so much, Lindsay. And tell us, where can we connect with you and learn more? How can we find you online?
Yeah, well, it was my pleasure being here. This is such a fun conversation. So my company is called Mind Money Balance. So you can find me. I'm most active on Instagram at Mind Money Balance. You can find me on my website as well, mindmoneybalance.com. And then I have a YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/ my full last name, Lindsay Bryan-Podvin.
Cool. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on the podcast, and I'm just really grateful for what you're doing and helping couples to resolve, couples and partners to resolve this so common concern that, you are part of the front lines of saving families. And I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm so glad to be connected. Thanks so much for having me on.